The strange patient. The medical hall of the starship was cold, silent, and filled with the faint hum of alien machines. Blue light glowed from the ceiling as the alien doctors moved around the examination table. Their thin hands held strange tools glowing with scanning energy. They whispered to one another in low voices, their faces pale with disbelief. On the table lay a human. His body was battered, his uniform torn and burned in several places. He looked calm, almost too calm, as if he was waiting for something ordinary. His breathing was steady, his eyes half open, and he gave a small smile, though his body clearly showed damage. One of the doctors raised her head. 17 bones, she said in her language, her voice shaking. Broken. 3 ribs, both legs, 1 arm, shoulder, and even the spine has cracks. Internal bleeding detected. He should not even be alive. The other doctors gathered around, their eyes glowing with the reflection of their scanning devices. One of them whispered, "No creature can survive this, not even for 1 minute." Yet the human had been lying there for hours. They had found him in the wreckage of a battlefield on the edge of the star system. Alien troops had fallen, machines burned, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. But the human had been crawling, dragging himself across the ground until rescue came. Now, instead of screaming in pain, he looked at them as if waiting for tea to be served. "Can you feel this?" one doctor asked, touching the broken leg gently. The human flinched but gave a small shrug. "Oh, that? Just a scratch." The doctors froze. They understood his words. The translator chip confirmed every syllable. "A scratch?" 17 bones shattered, and he called it a scratch? One alien doctor leaned closer. "Do you not feel pain?" The human gave a tired chuckle. "Of course I do. Hurts like hell. But what can I do? Cry about it? Doesn't fix anything." The doctors looked at each other, their faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and fear. They had treated warriors from across the galaxy. Species with shells like iron, creatures with bodies of crystal, beasts that healed wounds in seconds. But never had they seen one who simply endured broken bones with a smile. The chief doctor turned to his assistants. "We must stabilize him. If the damage spreads, even his body will collapse. He should be in coma already." The machines moved, wrapping the human in glowing fields of energy. Needles extended. Fluids ran through transparent tubes, alien symbols flickered on the displays. Yet still, the human kept watching them calmly, as if none of this was unusual. One of the younger doctors could not stay silent. She whispered, "Why did you keep moving? With such injuries, any being would surrender to death." The human turned his head slowly toward her. His eyes, though tired, shone with something that made her chest tighten. A fire deep and stubborn. "Because someone out there needed me," he said softly. "If I stopped, they would have died. So I kept going. Pain doesn't matter when lives are at stake." The doctors fell silent. His voice was calm, steady, filled with a weight they could not measure. The chief doctor studied him closely. He saw not a fragile creature, but something else. Something that refused to be measured by biology alone. The scans showed weakness, yet the eyes showed strength. He leaned toward his staff and whispered, "Perhaps this is why their kind wins wars. Not strength of body, but strength of will." The human closed his eyes for a moment, his breathing heavy but steady. Then, as if sensing their words, he smiled again. "Don't look so worried," he muttered. "I'll walk again in no time. Just fix me up. I've had worse." The room went still. Worse? 17 broken bones, and he had had worse? The doctors could not understand, but deep inside, fear and respect mixed in their hearts. They realized they were not treating just a patient. They were staring at a truth the galaxy had ignored. Humanity was not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest, but they endured. And endurance, they now understood, was far more dangerous than strength. The whisper in the halls, the human rested on the alien medical bed, wrapped in layers of glowing fields and strange gel-like bandages. His eyes closed from exhaustion, but he was not unconscious. Every so often he murmured something under his breath, half jokes, half memories of the battlefield. The alien doctors kept silent as they worked, but once they stepped outside the chamber, whispers filled the corridors. 17 fractures. "And he lives?" one muttered. "He walks with broken bones. He fights even when blood fills his lungs." "What kind of madness is this?" another said, his voice trembling. News traveled quickly through the ship. Assistants told soldiers. Soldiers told officers. Officers told commanders. Soon, the entire medical wing buzzed with one question. What are humans made of? The commander of the alien fleet, tall and armored in silver scales, entered the chamber to see the strange patient. His heavy footsteps echoed across the floor as the doctors bowed in respect. "This is the survivor?" the commander asked, his voice sharp. "Yes, honored one," replied the chief doctor. "He should have died hours ago. Even with our technology, we can barely keep him stable, and yet he refuses to surrender." The commander looked down at the human, studying him as though he were an artifact. The man's chest rose and fell steady despite the injuries. A faint smile still lingered at the corner of his lips as if he mocked pain itself. "Wake him," the commander ordered. The doctors hesitated. "He needs rest." "Wake him," the commander repeated. One doctor pressed a control on the table. A thin spark of light passed over the human's body. His eyes fluttered open. Slowly he turned his head and looked at the towering alien commander. "Another checkup?" the human muttered, voice hoarse but steady. "You'll run out of machines before I run out of bones." The room fell silent. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Human, you carry injuries that should kill 3 warriors. Why do you still breathe?" The human's lips curled into a grin. "Because I'm stubborn, and stubbornness keeps us alive." The commander tilted his head. "Is that what you call strength? Madness dressed as courage?" The human gave a weak chuckle. "Maybe both. Doesn't matter what name you give it, it's the reason I'm not dead." The commander studied him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. The doors closed, but the silence he left behind was heavy. In the dining hall of the ship, alien officers gathered. They spoke in low voices, their minds unsettled. "We fought these humans before," one said, tapping his claws nervously against the table. "We thought them weak. Their bodies break easily, but now, I am not so sure." Another leaned forward. "Did you not hear what the medic said?" He dragged himself across a battlefield with shattered bones. "If one human can do this, what can an army of them endure?" "They are not the strongest," whispered a third. "But they refuse to fall. That is worse than strength." The officers exchanged uneasy looks. It was rare for fear to creep into their voices, but tonight, fear was real. Back in the medical hall, the younger doctor stood beside the human's bed. She watched him carefully, studying his every breath. "You are strange," she whispered. "Stranger than any patient I have seen." The human opened one eye and gave her a tired smile. "Strange keeps me alive." She hesitated, then asked, "Do all of your kind endure like this?" The human thought for a moment. His face softened and his voice grew quiet. "Every human learns to push forward, some more than others. But yes, we all keep going. No matter how bad it gets, even when it hurts." The doctor shivered at his words. She had treated warriors who begged for mercy at the first touch of pain. But this man, he spoke of suffering as though it were only a companion. "Not a chain, then perhaps," she said slowly. "Your kind is the most dangerous in the galaxy." The human closed his eyes again, his faint smile returning. "Now you're starting to understand." The hum of machines filled the silence, but the weight of his words lingered in her mind. And for the first time, she wondered if the galaxy had underestimated humanity. The rumor of unbreakable flesh. The corridors of the alien starship buzzed with whispers. What had begun as quiet shock in the medical wing was now spreading like wildfire through the fleet. Every officer, every soldier, every technician had heard the story of the human who survived 17 broken bones. Some called it rumor. Others swore it was truth, but none could deny the unease tightening their chests. In the council chamber of the fleet, tall pillars of steel curved toward the ceiling, glowing with blue light. Around the table sat alien commanders, their scaled armor reflecting the glow. At the head, the High General tapped his claws against the armrest. "This human," the general began, his voice low but heavy. "He should not exist." A commander leaned forward. "We have fought humans before. Their bodies are fragile. A single strike can break them, yet this one resists even death itself. How do we fight such a creature?" Another shook his head. "Not creature, species. If one is like this, then many could be. Perhaps all." The chamber grew quiet. The weight of those words pressed upon them. 17 fractures, whispered one of the medical liaisons. His spine cracked, his lungs bleeding. Yet he laughed in our faces. The general's eyes narrowed. "Madness." "No," the liaison replied firmly. "Something else." "Something worse," the council murmured. For centuries their people had faced enemies with claws, fangs, armor, and fire, but never before had they faced one who smiled while broken. Meanwhile, in the medical hall, the human was slowly recovering. Alien machines hummed as they repaired the shattered bones, but his body was slower than their technology. Still, he forced himself to sit up against the protests of the doctors. "You should rest," the younger doctor scolded. "Rest later," he said, gritting his teeth as he swung his legs off the table. His breath hissed in pain, but his eyes burned with determination. "Right now, I need to move." The doctors exchanged looks. "You cannot walk." "Not yet," the human chuckled. "Watch me." And with trembling arms and legs wrapped in glowing braces, he stood. His entire body shook, but still he stood. His jaw clenched, his chest heaved, yet his voice came steady. "This isn't the first time I've had to walk broken." The younger doctor stepped back, stunned. Her people would collapse in agony with even half his injuries. Yet this human forced himself upright with nothing but sheer will. "Why?" she whispered. "Why suffer more than needed?" The human smiled faintly. "Because pain means I'm alive. And if I'm alive, I can still fight." Her heart skipped a beat. His words echoed louder than any machine in the room. Back in the council chamber, the High General finally spoke again. "We must reconsider humanity. We believe them weak, but weakness that refuses to break is no weakness at all. It is terror." The commanders looked uneasy. They remembered every battle where humans fought past exhaustion. Every time they bled and still pushed forward. Perhaps they had been blind, dismissing it as desperation. But now they saw it clearly. Endurance was humanity's weapon. "If one soldier can crawl with shattered bones," the general said slowly, "imagine an army of them. Imagine entire fleets of them refusing to fall. They would drown us in their will before we could crush their bodies." Silence filled the room. Then one commander muttered, "Perhaps it is already too late. Perhaps this is why their kind survives wars others cannot." The general's eyes hardened. "Send word to the Council of Worlds. They must hear of this. Humanity is not what we thought. They are not prey." His voice lowered, dark and heavy. "They are the storm." In the medical hall, the human finally collapsed back onto the bed, sweat dripping down his face. But even as his body gave in, his eyes gleamed with pride. The younger doctor stood frozen, her thoughts in chaos. She realized that this single human was rewriting everything her people believed about strength. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet fear took root. What if the galaxy had underestimated not just one human, but all of them? The Council's fear. The Council of Worlds gathered in a vast chamber carved into the side of an asteroid. The ceiling glittered with crystals that shone like stars, and the great table stretched long enough to seat rulers from 50 species. Holograms of distant delegates flickered in the air, their faces grim. At the center, the High General of the fleet stood tall, his silver-scaled armor glowing faintly. He raised a clawed hand and silence swept through the chamber. "You have heard the report," he began. "One human soldier, 17 broken bones, still alive, still moving, still defying reason." The delegates shifted uneasily. Some scoffed, others frowned, but none could ignore the unease creeping into their thoughts. One delegate, a being of molten stone, rumbled, "Exaggeration. No creature can rise with shattered bones. Your doctors lie." The High General's eyes burned. "Our doctors do not lie. They tremble. They whisper in fear. They know what they saw." A tall insectoid clicked her mandibles nervously. "If true, then humanity cannot be allowed to spread. If their bodies are fragile but their will unbreakable, they will outlast us all. Even if we kill 9, the 10th will rise and finish the fight." A reptilian delegate hissed, "Then perhaps we should end them now. Strike before they become more than nuisance." The chamber erupted into voices, anger and fear colliding. Some demanded extermination, others warned caution. The noise grew until the High General slammed his hand against the table, sending a shockwave through the air. "Silence!" The voices died. The general's gaze swept across them. "Do you not see? It is already too late. Humanity has shown us what they are. They will not break. They will not bow. Even in pieces they crawl forward. How do you destroy what refuses to stay destroyed?" A heavy silence filled the chamber. On the starship, the human slowly regained strength. Alien technology accelerated the healing of his bones, though the doctors warned it would take weeks before he could walk without aid. But each day he forced himself to move, to train, to prove them wrong. The younger doctor remained by his side, torn between duty and curiosity. She watched him endure pain that would kill her kind, watched him turn every struggle into a small victory. One evening, When the halls were quiet and the machines hummed softly, she asked him the question that had haunted her since the first day. Why do humans endure so much pain? Why not give in when survival is impossible? The human leaned back, eyes half closed, but his voice was steady. Because we've always been fragile, he said. On our world, everything tried to kill us. Storms, predators, hunger, disease. We broke bones, we bled, we suffered. But we learned one truth. If you keep moving, you live. If you stop, you die. So we don't stop, ever. The doctor shivered. His words carried weight deeper than any weapon. He continued, voice growing firmer. Pain teaches us. It shapes us. Every scar is a memory that says, I survived this. I can survive more. And when we fight, we don't fight to win easily. We fight because if we fall, others will fall too. That's why we keep going. For each other. The doctor stared at him, speechless. For her people, pain was weakness. For him, pain was proof of strength. She whispered, If the council learns this, they will fear you. The human opened his eyes, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Good, fear makes enemies hesitate, and hesitation is how we survive. Back in the council chamber, the arguments raged again. Some cried for war, others for peace. But one truth was sinking into every heart. Humanity could not be measured by flesh or bone. Their weapon was not their bodies. It was their refusal to quit. And in that refusal lay a danger none of them had prepared for. Far away, the human on the medical bed whispered to himself as he drifted to sleep, unaware that entire worlds were now trembling at the thought of his kind. We break, he murmured softly. But we never stay broken. The younger doctor, listening from the shadows, felt a chill run through her veins. She realized the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something they could not control. The unbroken truth, the Council of Worlds had debated for 3 endless cycles. The chamber was thick with fear and arguments. Some demanded humanity's destruction. Others warned that a war against such a species would end in disaster. At last, the High General stood and raised his clawed hand. The chamber fell silent. His words echoed across the room. Humanity cannot be measured by weapons or fleets. They carry no claws, no armor, no shells. And yet they endure beyond reason. Even when broken, they rise. Even when bleeding, they march. This makes them the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Murmurs swept through the delegates. A decision was close. Then what do you propose? Asked the molten stone delegate, his voice like grinding rock. The general's eyes darkened. We cannot let them spread unchecked. If one human can shake our fleets with his will alone, imagine millions. Either we crush them now, or we kneel before them later. The words hung heavy. The chamber erupted once more, fear and pride clashing. Yet beneath the shouting, one truth united them all. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. And now the price of that mistake loomed. On the starship, the human rose from the bed again. His body was still wrapped in braces, his ribs still healing, but his spirit refused to wait. The younger doctor hurried to his side, alarmed. You should rest, she protested. He shook his head. No time. The fight doesn't pause just because I'm broken. She reached out, her voice trembling. You cannot face them like this. Your wounds, he smiled faintly, cutting her off. Pain doesn't stop us. It reminds us we're still alive. He stepped forward, limping, his body groaning with every movement. Each step was agony, yet each step was victory. The doctor stared, realization burning through her. This man was not unique. He was a window into all of humanity. Your council fears you, she whispered. The human's grin widened, though his face was pale. Good, they should. Fear keeps them honest. That night, word of the council's debate reached the fleet. Soldiers whispered of extermination, of humanity being marked for death. The younger doctor returned to the human, her heart heavy. They may come for your kind, she warned. The council believes you are too dangerous to exist. The human leaned back against the wall, silent for a moment. Then he laughed, a low, rough sound that made her shiver. Too dangerous to exist? That's what predators say when prey starts fighting back. She frowned. Do you not fear extinction? The human's gaze hardened, his eyes burning with something that felt larger than himself. Extinction, he said quietly. We've stared at it since the day we stood upright. Every storm, every beast, every plague tried to erase us. But we're still here. If the galaxy thinks it can finish what nature couldn't, let them try. The doctor froze. His words were not threat, but promise. Weeks later, the council delivered its verdict. Humanity would be watched, restricted, monitored. But extermination? Even the bravest delegates dared not vote for it. The thought of fighting a species that refused to stay down chilled their blood. In the official report, one line was underlined 3 times. Humans do not surrender, even when broken. On the starship, the human finally walked freely, his bones healed, his body scarred but stronger. He thanked the doctors, flashing his crooked smile as he prepared to return to his people. The younger doctor stood watching him, her mind forever changed. She had once believed strength was in perfect flesh and sharp weapons. Now she understood. True strength was in the will to endure, no matter the pain. Before he left, she asked, "What will you tell your people about us?" The human paused at the door, his voice steady and calm. "I'll tell them the truth, that the galaxy finally noticed us, and that it's afraid." He stepped into the corridor, his shadow stretching long under the ship's lights. The doctor whispered to herself, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. "They break, but they never stay broken."